After traveling together for work, she got pregnant by the Billionaire CEO, then he reassigned her. Heather Sanders had been staring at the same spreadsheet for 20 minutes, and the numbers still weren't making sense. The fluorescent lights in the O'Connell Dynamics office hummed overhead, one of them flickering just enough to be annoying, but not enough for facilities to fix. Outside the window, Austin traffic crawled down Congress Avenue, brake lights bleeding into the late afternoon haze. 28 and already exhausted. That's what she'd thought that morning, pulling on the same black slacks she'd worn twice that week, because laundry felt like too much effort. Her apartment in Hyde Park was quiet, tree-lined, the kind of place people called charming when they meant small. The AC unit rattled when it kicked on. The upstairs neighbor played guitar at weird hours. It was fine, everything was fine. She rubbed her eyes, mascara she'd forgotten to take off last night, flaking onto her fingers. Coffee had gone cold in her mug 2 hours ago, the one with the chip on the rim she kept meaning to throw out. Her phone buzzed, a text from her sister asking if she was coming home for Thanksgiving. She swiped it away. Sanders. Heather looked up. Brody O'Connell stood in her doorway, one hand on the frame, tie loosened like he'd been in meetings all day, which he had been. He was always in meetings, 45 and still unfairly good-looking. She hated noticing that. Dark hair going grey at the temples, the kind of grey that looked intentional. Tall enough that he had to duck slightly through doorways, though this one was fine. His shirt was wrinkled near the collar. He'd been running his hand through his hair again, the thing he did when numbers weren't adding up the way he wanted. "You got a minute?" he asked. "Yeah, sure." She minimized the spreadsheet like he couldn't see she'd been zoning out. "What's up?" He stepped inside, closed the door. That was new. Her office was barely big enough for her desk, and one sad plant she kept forgetting to water. With him in here, the walls felt closer. "Denver pitch is next week," he said. "Mitchell just bailed. Food poisoning, apparently. Though I'm pretty sure it's his kid's recital or something." "Okay." She waited. "I need someone who knows the logistics model inside and out. Someone who can handle the technical questions if they push back on implementation." The air conditioning kicked on with its usual grinding noise. Heather became aware of how close he was standing, how her office smelled like old coffee, and the lavender plug-in thing that had stopped working weeks ago. "You want me to go to Denver," she said, "if you're available." She should have said no. Should have made up an excuse. Prior commitment, family thing, literally anything. But the truth was her calendar was empty except for work, and they both knew it. "When do we leave?" "Sunday night. Redeye. Meetings start Monday morning, run through Wednesday." He shifted his weight, hands in his pockets. "I know it's last minute. It's fine, I can do it." Something flickered across his face. Relief, maybe, or something else she couldn't read. He nodded. "Good. I'll have Kelly send you the details." He should have left then. Should have walked out, closed the door, gone back to whatever executive emergency was waiting for him on the 10th floor. Instead, he stayed there, one hand still on the doorframe, looking at her like he was trying to figure out what to say next. "You okay?" he asked. The question caught her off guard. "Yeah, why? You look tired." "Gee, thanks. I didn't mean—" He stopped, ran that hand through his hair again. "I just meant, if you need to push back on anything, you can. The workload's been insane lately." "I'm good," she said, "really." They'd had this dance before. Moments that stretched a little too long. Conversations that didn't quite end when they should. She'd been working under him, God, terrible phrasing for him, working for him for 2 years now. Long enough to know he took his coffee black, that he got quiet when he was stressed, that sometimes in late meetings when everyone else had left, he'd lean back in his chair and talk about something other than quarterly projections. His ex-wife, his dog that died when he was 12, the cabin in Montana he kept meaning to visit, things you didn't usually know about your CEO. "All right," he said finally. "I'll let you get back to it." He left. The door clicked shut. Heather sat there staring at the space where he'd been standing, listening to the fluorescent light buzz and the muffled sound of someone's phone ringing down the hall. Her hands were shaking. She looked down at them, surprised. It wasn't nervousness, or maybe it was. Maybe it was the way he'd looked at her when he asked if she was okay, like he actually wanted to know the answer, like she was something other than a line item in his organizational chart. She pulled up the spreadsheet again. The numbers still didn't make sense. Outside, the traffic had gotten worse. Someone honked. The sun was starting to set, turning the sky that burnt orange color it did sometimes in October. The light slanting through her window and making everything look softer than it actually was. Denver. 3 days. Close quarters, long meetings, hotel rooms on the same floor probably. She should have said no. She'd known that the second he asked. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Kelly from Executive Admin. Flight details attached. Hotel confirmation to follow. Let me know if you need anything. 3 emails down was one from Brody, sent 10 minutes ago, timestamp showing he'd written it right after leaving her office. Thanks for stepping up on short notice. Really appreciate it. She read it twice, deleted it, then went to her deleted folder and read it again. The plant on her desk was dying. Brown edges on the leaves, soil dry as dust. She made a mental note to water it tomorrow, knowing she probably wouldn't. Some things you just let die slowly, she thought, then immediately regretted the metaphor. Friday afternoon bled into evening. People started packing up, the office emptying out floor by floor. Heather stayed late the way she always did, telling herself she was finishing the quarterly report, but really just avoiding going home to her too-quiet apartment, where the only sound would be the AC rattling and her own thoughts. Around 7, her phone buzzed. Her sister again. "Seriously, are you coming for Thanksgiving?" Mom's asking. She typed out a response. Probably not. Work's crazy right now. The truth was she didn't want to sit around her parents' table in San Antonio, listening to her sister talk about her kids and her husband and her perfectly normal life, while everyone carefully avoided asking Heather when she was going to settle down. 28 and single, 28 and living alone, and 28 and married to a job that kept her too busy to notice how empty her apartment felt on Sunday mornings. She closed her laptop. The office was dark except for the emergency exit signs and the glow from the vending machines down the hall. The building made settling noises, the heating system clicking on even though it was still 70 degrees outside. October in Austin meant the weather couldn't make up its mind. Hot during the day, cool at night, the kind of fall that felt like it was just pretending. The parking garage was nearly empty. Her Civic sat under a burnt-out light, the same spot she parked in every day. She'd meant to get the inspection sticker renewed last month, meant to do a lot of things. The drive home took 15 minutes in no traffic, past the coffee shop that closed at 6, past the taco truck that was just opening up for the dinner rush, past the CrossFit gym where people who had their lives together did burpees at ridiculous hours. Her street was quiet, lined with old trees that dropped leaves all over her car. She'd need to wash it before Denver. Add that to the list. Inside her apartment, she dropped her bag by the door and stood there for a moment, listening to nothing. The fridge hummed. A car drove past outside. Someone laughed. Her downstairs neighbor, probably, the one who always seemed to have people over on Friday nights. She should eat something, should do laundry, should call her mother back. Instead, she poured a glass of wine that had been open too long, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the couch that used to belong to her college roommate. The cushions were worn down on one side from where she always sat. The TV remote had batteries that were dying, the power button sticking. Her phone sat on the coffee table, screen dark. She picked it up, opened her email, scrolled past the flight confirmation and hotel details to that message from Brody. Still there. Still just 2 sentences. She locked her phone, drank the wine. It tasted sour. Denver was in 2 days. 3 days of meetings, technical presentations, late dinners going over strategy. 3 days of trying not to notice the way he looked at her sometimes when he thought she wasn't paying attention. 3 days of pretending this was normal, professional, exactly what it was supposed to be. The wine glass sat empty on the coffee table. Through the window, Austin sprawled out in a mess of lights and traffic and people living their lives. Somewhere in that tangle was Brody's house. She'd never been there, but she knew it was in Westlake, one of those modern places with too much glass and not enough curtains. She wondered if he was home, if he ate dinner alone the way she did, if he stood at his own window sometimes and felt the weight of everything he wasn't saying. Her phone buzzed one more time. A calendar reminder. Pack for Denver. She left the glass where it was. Went to bed with the mascara still on. The dishes still in the sink. The laundry still unfolded in the basket by the closet. Tomorrow. She'd deal with it all tomorrow. The AC unit rattled. The upstairs neighbor started playing guitar. Sunday would come too fast. The redeye out of Austin Bergstrom was delayed 40 minutes. Some kind of maintenance issue, the gate agent said. Like that made it better. Heather sat in a chair by the window, watching baggage handlers load suitcases onto a different plane, her coffee from the airport Starbucks already going lukewarm. Brody showed up 10 minutes before boarding, carrying a leather bag that probably cost more than her rent and wearing jeans. She'd never seen him in jeans. Dark wash fitted but not tight, paired with a grey Henley that made him look less like a CEO and more like someone's attractive dad picking his kid up from soccer practice. She looked away. "Sorry," he said, dropping into the seat next to her. "Traffic on 71 was a nightmare." "It's fine. We're delayed anyway." He glanced at her coffee cup. "That any good?" "It's airport coffee. What do you think?" The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. Fair point. The terminal was half empty at this hour. Just business travelers and a few families with kids who'd given up trying to sleep. CNN played on a TV. Nobody was watching. Someone's phone kept buzzing over and over, the vibration rattling against plastic armrests. "You packed light," Heather said, nodding at his bag. 3 days. How much do I need?" She thought about her own suitcase, checked because she'd somehow convinced herself she needed options. 4 different blazers, shoes she probably wouldn't wear, the straightener she never used but brought anyway, just in case. "Yeah," she said. "That's smart." They boarded 20 minutes later. The plane was maybe half full, the kind of flight where everyone got their own row. Heather had booked them in different sections, her in economy, him in first, because that felt appropriate somehow. But when she got to her seat, Brody was right behind her. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Sitting." He gestured to the empty seat next to hers. "First class is full. I'm on standby." Seriously. Kelly booked it last minute. He shoved his bag in the overhead, then slid past her to take the window seat. "This okay?" "No." "Yeah, it's fine." The plane smelled like recycled air and someone's fast food from 3 flights ago. The seat cushion was worn thin, the tray table sticky. She wiped it with a napkin from her purse, then immediately felt stupid for caring. Brody pulled out his phone, started scrolling through emails. His shoulder was maybe 3 inches from hers. She could smell his cologne, something woody, expensive, the kind of scent that probably had a pretentious name like Nordic Forest or whatever. The plane taxied, sat on the runway, taxied some more. "You nervous?" he asked. "About the pitch? About flying?" "No. Why would I be nervous about flying? Some people are." He locked his phone, slid it into his pocket. "My ex-wife used to grip the armrest during takeoff, white knuckles, the whole thing." Heather had heard him mention his ex-wife exactly 3 times in 2 years, once in a meeting, once at a company happy hour where he'd had 2 whiskeys and gotten quieter than usual. And now. "How long were you married?" she asked. 8 years, divorced for 6. "Kids?" "No." Something shifted in his expression. "She wanted them. I kept saying later, when the company was more stable, when I had more time. Turned out later meant never." The plane started moving faster. The engine noise rose to a dull roar. "That why you split up?" Heather asked. "Part of it." He was quiet for a moment. "Mostly I think she just got tired of coming second to spreadsheets." The nose lifted. The ground fell away. Austin disappeared beneath them, highways and strip malls, and the river snaking through downtown, all of it shrinking into toy-sized pieces. Heather didn't realize she was holding her breath until they leveled off and the seatbelt sign dinged off. "You okay?" Brody asked. "Yeah, fine." "You sure? Because you look—" "I'm fine." He nodded, didn't push it. That was one thing she'd learned about him. He knew when to back off. The flight attendant came by with drinks. Brody got water. Heather got ginger ale, which she never drank except on planes, and she had no idea why. Some kind of weird muscle memory from childhood trips to visit her grandparents in Oklahoma. "So what's the play tomorrow?" she asked. "I mean, I read the brief, but what are they actually worried about?" Brody leaned back, the seat creaking under his weight. "Implementation timeline. They think 6 months is aggressive." "It is aggressive. I know. But if we give them 9 months, they'll want 12 and we'll lose Q2 revenue." He rubbed his eyes. "We just need to walk them through the phased rollout. Show them we're not trying to do everything at once. And if they push back on the logistics model, then you explain it." He looked at her. "That's why you're here. You know that system better than anyone." The cabin lights dimmed. Most people had already closed their window shades, trying to sleep through the 3-hour flight. But Brody left his open, the darkness outside pressing against the glass. "Can I ask you something?" Heather said. "Sure." "Why'd you really bring me? I mean, there are other people who know the model. Senior people. You're senior. I'm a project analyst. I'm not even management." He was quiet for long enough that she thought maybe he wasn't going to answer. Then, "You don't bullshit. When clients ask questions, you don't give them the corporate line. You tell them what's actually going to happen." "That doesn't always make people happy." "No," he said, "but it makes them trust you." Something in her chest tightened. She looked down at her ginger ale, the bubbles fizzing against the plastic cup. "Plus," he added, "you don't panic. I've seen you handle worse than a room full of skeptical investors." "Like what?" "Like that Philadelphia disaster last year, when the entire system crashed 2 hours before launch and everyone was losing their minds, and you just sat there and fixed it." She remembered Philadelphia, remembered wanting to throw her laptop out a window. "I definitely panicked." "You didn't show it." "I'm good at hiding things." The words came out wrong, too honest. She could feel him looking at her, but she kept her eyes on the seatback screen in front of her, pretending to read the flight map showing their little plane icon somewhere over New Mexico. "Heather, I'm going to try to sleep," she said. "Long day tomorrow." She reclined her seat the 2 inches it would go, pulled her cardigan tighter and closed her eyes. She could still feel him there 3 inches away, not saying whatever he'd been about to say. She didn't sleep, just lay there with her eyes closed, listening to the engine drone and someone snoring a few rows back, feeling every minute of the flight pass in slow motion. They landed in Denver a little after midnight. The airport was almost empty, just scattered travelers and the custodial crew buffing the floors. Their hotel was downtown, one of those modern places with a lobby that tried too hard, all concrete and Edison bulbs and a bar that was somehow still open. "You want a drink?" Brody asked as they checked in. She should have said no, should have taken her room key and gone straight upstairs and called it a night. "Sure," she said. The bar was nearly dead, just them and 2 guys in suits arguing about the Broncos. The bartender looked like he wanted to go home. Heather ordered a glass of wine. Brody got whiskey, neat. They sat at a table by the window. Outside, Denver sprawled in all directions, the mountains invisible in the darkness but somehow still present, pressing in from the west. "You ever been here before?" Brody asked. "Once, college roommate's wedding. I don't remember much except it was hot and everyone kept talking about the altitude. It's a mile high." "I know. They told me about 17 times." She sipped her wine. It was better than the stuff she bought at H-E-B. "You?" "Few times. Business mostly. There's a good hiking trail up in Boulder if we have time." "We won't have time." "Probably not." He swirled his whiskey, watching the amber liquid catch the light. "You hike much?" "Not really. I keep meaning to. There's that Greenbelt trail near my place, but I don't know. It always seems like something I'll do later." "Later," he repeated. "Yeah, I'm familiar with that." The bar was playing something low and jazzy, the kind of music designed to make you feel contemplative about your life choices. The bartender wiped down the same spot on the counter for the 3rd time. "This is weird," Heather said. "What is?" "This, us, having drinks at 1 in the morning in Denver. We've had drinks before. At company things with other people around." She set her glass down. "This is different." He didn't argue. Just looked at her with those grey-green eyes that had probably closed 1,000 deals, reading people like balance sheets. "You want to go to your room," he said. not a question. I should. But you're not. Not yet. Outside, a cab pulled up. A couple got out laughing about something, hanging on each other. The woman's heel caught on the curb, and the man steadied her. And they both cracked up like it was the funniest thing in the world. You ever miss it? Heather asked. Miss what? Being married. Having someone. Brody took a long drink. Sometimes. Mostly I just miss the idea of it. The reality was a lot of silence and separate bedrooms. That's depressing. Yeah. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. What about you? You seeing anyone? No. Why not? She laughed. It came out harder than she meant. I don't know, I work too much. I'm too picky. Take your pick. You're not too picky. You don't know that. I know you don't settle for things that don't work. He leaned back. That's not being picky, that's having standards. The wine was going to her head. Or maybe it was just the altitude. The mile-high thing everyone kept talking about. I should really go, she said. Okay. She didn't move, neither did he. The bartender cleared his throat. Last call, folks. They took the elevator up together, 9th floor. Their rooms were across the hall from each other. Kelly had probably thought she was being efficient. The hallway was too bright. The carpet that industrial pattern hotels used to hide stains. Heather's keycard didn't work on the first try. Or the second. Brody waited, standing by his own door, not offering to help because that would have made it worse somehow. Third time, the lock clicked green. Well, she said. Good night. Heather. She turned. He was just standing there, hand on his doorframe, tie he'd been carrying now slung over his shoulder, looking at her the way he'd looked at her in her office on Friday, like he was trying to solve an equation that wouldn't balance. Yeah? Nothing. He shook his head. Sleep well. She went inside, closed the door, stood there in the dark hotel room that smelled like industrial detergent and someone else's life, listening to her heart do something stupid in her chest. Across the hall she heard his door open, close. The heater kicked on with a rattle, the mini fridge hummed. Somewhere far away someone laughed. She didn't unpack, just kicked off her shoes, lay down on top of the comforter still wearing her jeans and stared at the ceiling. Tomorrow was the pitch, the reason they were here, the only reason. She repeated it to herself until she almost believed it. The ceiling had a water stain in the corner. She counted to 10, 20, 50. Across the hall, everything was quiet. The pitch went better than it should have. Heather had barely slept, maybe 2 hours of staring at that water stain on the ceiling, listening to Denver's ambient noise through walls that were too thin. But when the client started questioning the implementation timeline, something clicked. She walked them through the phased rollout like she'd done it 100 times, answering every technical question without hesitation, without the corporate hedging that made people nervous. Brody watched from the other side of the conference table. She could feel his eyes on her, even when she wasn't looking. By 3 o'clock they had a verbal agreement, handshakes all around. The senior partner, a guy named Richardson with silver hair and a Rolex that caught the light, clapped Brody on the shoulder. Your analyst knows her stuff. She does, Brody said. He looked at Heather. Couldn't have done it without her. The clients took them to dinner. Some steakhouse in Lodo with exposed brick, and waiters in black aprons who took wine seriously. Richardson ordered a bottle that probably cost more than Heather's car payment. The conversation flowed easy. War stories from other deals, complaints about vendors, the usual business dinner stuff. Heather was on her second glass of wine when she noticed Brody had barely touched his. He was quieter than usual, playing with his fork, checking his phone every few minutes like he was waiting for something. You okay? She asked when Richardson got up to take a call. Yeah, fine. You've checked your phone like 10 times. He set it down. Just making sure nothing's on fire back home. Is it? Not yet. The food came. Steak for everyone except Heather, who'd ordered salmon because she never knew what to do with a steak knife in front of clients. The fish was overcooked, but she ate it anyway, pushing asparagus around her plate while the men talked about golf handicaps. By 9:30, Richardson was yawning. Gentleman, lady, I think I'm going to call it early flight tomorrow. They said their goodbyes on the sidewalk. The November air had teeth, nothing like Austin, where it was probably still 70 degrees. Heather had forgotten her coat. Of course she had. "You cold?" Brody asked as they walked back toward the hotel. "I'm fine." "You're shivering." "It's like 2 blocks." He shrugged off his jacket anyway, held it out. When she didn't take it, he draped it over her shoulders. It smelled like him. Like that expensive cologne and something else, something warmer. "Thanks," she said. They walked in silence. 16th Street was still busy, people spilling out of bars, a street musician playing guitar for nobody, a homeless guy asking for change. The mountains were invisible in the dark, but somehow she could still sense them, massive and indifferent. "That was good today," Brody said. "What you did in there?" "I just answered their questions." "You made them feel safe. That's harder than it sounds." She pulled his jacket tighter. "I wasn't sure we'd land it." "I was." He glanced at her. "You know what you're doing. You just don't always seem to know that you know." They reached the hotel. The lobby was quieter than last night, just the front desk clerk and a couple checking in with too much luggage. The bar was closed, chairs already up on tables. The elevator ride felt longer than it was. Heather watched the numbers climb. Brody stood with his hands in his pockets, tie loosened, looking at his reflection in the polished doors. 9th floor. The hallway still too bright. "Well," Heather said, pulling off his jacket, "thanks for this. Keep it until you get back to your room. I'm already here." "I know, but—" He stopped, ran his hand through his hair. "Never mind." She should have swiped her key card, should have said goodnight and walked inside and closed the door. Instead, she just stood there holding his jacket, watching him not say whatever he was trying not to say. "Brody." "Yeah?" "What are we doing?" The question hung between them. Down the hall, the ice machine rumbled to life. "I don't know," he said. "That's not an answer." "It's the only one I've got." She could see it in his face. The same thing she'd been feeling since Friday. Since before Friday, if she was honest. The way meetings ran long because neither of them wanted to leave. The way he found excuses to stop by her office. The way she'd learned to read his silences better than most people read words. "We should probably—" she started. "Yeah." Neither of them moved. "This is a bad idea," Heather said. "Probably. I work for you. I know. And tomorrow we fly back and everything goes back to normal. Does it?" He took a step closer, not much, just enough. "Has anything felt normal for a while now?" Her mouth went dry. "No. No," he repeated. The hallway was empty. The elevator dinged somewhere far away. Heather became aware of her own heartbeat, too loud in her ears. "If we do this," she said, "we don't have to do anything. But if we do—" He looked at her, really looked at her, the way he had that day in her office, the way he had at the bar last night, like she was a problem he couldn't solve and didn't want to. "Then we figure it out," he said. "After. After." The word that meant before everything got complicated. Before they had to think about HR policies and power dynamics and all the reasons this was a terrible idea. Heather's key card was in her hand. She'd been holding it so tight, the edges dug into her palm. "Okay," she said. "Okay?" She swiped the card. The lock clicked green. She pushed the door open, then looked back at him. He was still standing there, frozen, like he couldn't quite believe what was happening. "You coming?" she asked. He followed her inside. The room was dark except for the slice of light from the hallway. Heather heard the door close behind her, heard the lock click, heard nothing but her own breathing and his, too loud in the silence. She turned around. He was right there, close enough to touch, his face half-shadow in the dim light bleeding through the curtains. "Heather," she kissed him, not gentle, not tentative. Just kissed him the way she'd been thinking about kissing him for longer than she wanted to admit, her hands fisting in his shirt, his arms coming around her like he'd been waiting for permission. He tasted like whiskey he hadn't drunk, and something else, something that made her forget why this was a bad idea. His hand found the back of her neck, fingers threading through her hair, and she made a sound she didn't recognize. They broke apart, foreheads touching, breathing hard. "We don't have to," he started. "Stop talking. I just want to make sure—" She kissed him again, felt him smile against her mouth before he stopped smiling. before his hand slid down to her waist and pulled her closer, before everything that had been building for months finally broke through. They didn't make it to the bed right away, just stood there in the dark, learning each other, all the careful distance they'd maintained collapsing into this. His shirt came off, then hers. The room spun, or maybe that was just her. Dizzy from wine and altitude and the feeling of his mouth on her collarbone. "Is this okay?" he asked, his voice rough. "Yes." "You're sure?" She looked at him, his face in the darkness. The grey at his temples, the scar above his left eyebrow she'd never noticed before, everything familiar and completely new. "I'm sure." What happened next didn't need words, just hands and breath and the sound of fabric hitting the floor, the hotel bed that was too firm, the sheets that smelled like industrial detergent, his weight above her, then beside her, then the two of them tangled together like they were trying to get as close as physics would allow. It wasn't perfect. She bumped her elbow on the headboard. He apologized too much. They laughed once, nervous and surprised, but it was real. It was them. No corporate masks, no professional distance, just two people who'd been circling this for too long, finally letting go. After, they lay there in the dark, her head on his chest, his hand tracing patterns on her shoulder. The heater kicked on. Outside, a siren wailed past. "So," he said. "So." That happened. Yeah, she could feel his heart beating under her cheek, still faster than normal. "You okay?" "I don't know." He was quiet for a moment. "Are you?" "I don't know either." They should have talked about it, should have figured out what this meant, what happened next, how they'd navigate this back in Austin. Instead, they just lay there, neither of them wanting to be the first to move, to break whatever spell had carried them here. Heather's eyes grew heavy, the wine and the exhaustion and the feeling of his arms around her pulling her under. She fought it for a while, but eventually, sleep won. When she woke up, pale morning light was seeping through the curtains. Brody was still there, awake, watching her. "Hi," he said. "Hi." "You snore." "I do not." "Just a little. It's cute." She buried her face in his chest. "Oh, God." "Hey." He tilted her chin up. "You okay?" "I don't know, are we?" "I don't know either," he said, "but I'm not sorry. Are you?" She thought about it, about her career and his position and all the ways this could blow up in their faces, about going back to Austin and pretending this never happened, about the look in his eyes right now, like she was something precious he was afraid of breaking. "No," she said. "I'm not sorry." He kissed her forehead. "Good." They had 2 hours before checkout. They spent one of them just lying there, talking about nothing important. His dog from childhood, her sister's kids, the worst job interviews they'd ever had, normal things, easy things. The kind of conversation that felt like sunlight after too long in shadow. Eventually reality crept back in. She needed to shower, pack, check her phone, which she'd forgotten existed since last night. The real world was waiting. Brody got dressed slowly, like he was reluctant to put the armor back on. She watched from the bed, wrapped in the sheet, memorizing the way he moved. "So," he said, buttoning his shirt, "what do we do about this?" "I don't know. We should probably talk about it. Back home." "Yeah. But not," he gestured vaguely, "not like it's a problem. Just figure out how to do this right." "Okay." He sat on the edge of the bed, took her hand. "I don't want this to be weird." "It's going to be a little weird." "Yeah," he smiled. "But good weird. Maybe." He leaned in, kissed her softly. "I'll see you at the airport." "See you at the airport." He left. The door clicked shut. Heather sat there in the tangled sheets, listening to his footsteps fade down the hall, feeling the ghost of his hands on her skin. Her phone was on the nightstand, screen dark. 11 missed messages, 3 from her sister, 5 from Kelly about scheduling, 3 from her mother she'd deal with later. None of it mattered right now. She got up, walked to the window, looked out at Denver in the daylight. The mountains were visible now, white-capped and massive, stretching across the western horizon. People moved on the streets below, heading to work, living their lives, having no idea that something fundamental had just shifted in hers. The shower was running hot when her phone buzzed. A text from Brody. "No regrets." She typed back, "None." Another buzz. "See you soon." She set the phone down, stepped into the shower, let the water run over her face, washing away the smell of him, the feeling of his hands, everything that would make it harder to pretend tomorrow. But she didn't want to pretend. That was the problem. Or maybe it was the solution. She didn't know yet. The water ran cold. She got out, dried off, started packing. Her blazers and shoes and the straightener she never used, everything back in its place. Evidence erased, except for the feeling in her chest that wouldn't go away, the one that said everything had changed and there was no going back. Her reflection in the bathroom mirror looked the same. Same hair, same face, same tired eyes, but something underneath had shifted. She could feel it, settling into her bones. The flight home wasn't for another 6 hours. Plenty of time to figure out what she'd just done, or plenty of time to panic about it. She chose both. Back in Austin, everything felt different and exactly the same. Heather sat at her desk on Monday morning, staring at the same spreadsheet she'd been working on before Denver, and nothing made sense anymore. The numbers were the same. The fluorescent light still flickered. The coffee from the break room still tasted like burnt water, but she couldn't focus, couldn't think past the weight of Brody's hands on her skin, the sound of his voice in the dark saying, "No regrets." Her phone buzzed. A text from him. "Meeting at 2 Conference Room B. Bring the Denver projections. Professional, distant. Exactly what they'd agreed on during the flight home. Keep it separate. Figure things out slowly. Don't let it affect work." Except work was all they had. They couldn't exactly go on dates. Couldn't be seen together outside the office without people asking questions. So they existed in this strange limbo, stealing moments between meetings, his hand brushing hers when he handed her documents, looks that lasted too long across conference tables. It had been 2 weeks since Denver, 2 weeks of pretending everything was normal while something fundamental had shifted beneath their feet. The meeting at 2 was just them. He closed the door, pulled the blinds, and for a moment she thought, "We need to talk about the implementation timeline," he said. "Right, work." They talked about work, phases and milestones and resource allocation, professional, appropriate. His leg pressed against hers under the table and stayed there. "You okay?" he asked when they were done, gathering papers. "Yeah, you?" "Yeah." He looked at her. "You want to, I don't know, get dinner sometime? Like a date? I guess. Is that weird?" "Everything about this is weird. But good weird?" She smiled despite herself. "Maybe." They made plans for Friday. Some quiet place in South Austin where nobody from work would see them. It felt illicit and thrilling and terrifying all at once. Friday never happened. Thursday morning, Heather woke up nauseous. She'd been tired lately, exhausted really, the kind of bone-deep fatigue that sleep didn't fix. She'd blamed it on work stress, on staying up too late texting Brody things that made her blush in daylight. But this was different. This was her body staging a rebellion. She barely made it to the bathroom. After, she sat on the cold tile floor, forehead pressed against her knees, trying to remember the last time she'd felt normal. The last time her jeans hadn't felt tight. The last time she'd wanted coffee instead of being repulsed by the smell. The last time she'd had a period. Oh no, she counted backwards. Denver was 4 weeks ago. Before that, she'd been so busy, so caught up in work and the weird dance with Brody, she hadn't even noticed. 6 weeks, maybe 7. Her hands started shaking. She called in sick, drove to a CVS 3 neighborhoods over where nobody would recognize her, bought 2 tests because 1 felt too terrifying, and 3 felt like admitting something she wasn't ready to admit. Back home, she sat on the bathroom floor again, staring at the box. The instructions were simple. Pee on stick, wait 3 minutes. Blue line yes, white line no, like some kind of biological coin flip that would determine the rest of her life. She did it twice, once with each test, because maybe the first one was wrong. Maybe it was a fluke, maybe both blew. She sat there on the cold tile, test sticks on the counter, and tried to breathe. The AC unit rattled. Somewhere outside, a dog barked. Normal sounds for an absolutely not normal moment. Pregnant. She was pregnant. with Brody's baby. The man who was her boss, who she'd slept with exactly once, who she'd been planning to have dinner with tomorrow like they were normal people, doing normal relationship things. She started laughing. It came out wrong, half hysterical, echoing off the bathroom walls. Then she was crying. Then both. Sitting on the floor of her too-small apartment, pregnant with her CEO's baby, with no idea what the hell to do about it. She didn't go to work the next day either, or the day after that. Called in with some vague excuse about a stomach bug, which wasn't entirely a lie. The morning sickness was real. So was the exhaustion. And the panic that made her chest tight every time she thought about telling Brody. Monday morning, she forced herself back to the office, put on the black slacks that barely fit, the blazer that hid the fact that her body was already changing. Makeup to cover the circles under her eyes. Professional armor. Brody caught her in the hallway before lunch. "Hey," he said, voice low. "You okay? Kelly said you were sick." "I'm fine." "You sure you look—" "I'm fine," she repeated. Then, "Can we talk later?" Something in her voice must have registered. His expression shifted. "Yeah, of course. My office. Somewhere private." "Okay." He checked his watch. 6. Everyone should be gone by then. She nodded, went back to her desk, stared at spreadsheets and saw nothing but those blue lines. At 6:15, she knocked on his office door. "Come in." He was at his desk, tie loosened, shirt sleeves rolled up. The Austin skyline stretched out behind him, sun setting over the hills west of town, painting everything orange and gold. "Hey," he said, smiling. "I was starting to think you forgot." "No." The smile faded. "What's wrong?" She closed the door, locked it, stood there with her back against it, trying to figure out how to say it. "Heather, you're scaring me." "I'm pregnant." The words hung in the air between them. Outside, someone laughed in the hallway. A phone rang somewhere. Normal office sounds for an absolutely not normal moment. Brody just stared at her. "What?" "I'm pregnant. From Denver. I took 2 tests. Both positive." He stood up, sat back down, stood up again. Are you sure?" "Yeah." "Okay." He ran his hands through his hair. "Okay, okay. That's the 3rd time you've said okay." "I don't—" He stopped, started pacing. "How far along?" 7 weeks, I think, maybe 8. "Jesus." She waited, watched him process it, watched the equations running behind his eyes, CEO brain trying to solve a problem that had no business solution. "What do you want to do?" he asked finally. The question landed wrong, too careful, too neutral. "I don't know," she said. "I just found out Thursday. I don't know." "Right, of course." More pacing. "Have you seen a doctor?" "Not yet." "You should. We should." "I'll go with you. Whatever you need." "Brody." He stopped, looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw it, the panic, the fear, the same thing she'd been feeling since Thursday reflected back. "This is bad," he said. "I know. I mean, not a baby, that's not what I mean, just the situation, the timing, I know what you mean." He sat down again, elbows on his desk, head in his hands. "People are going to find out. Eventually, yeah. HR's going to have questions about our relationship, about whether you coerced me." The words came out sharper than she meant. "Because you're my boss, and I'm your employee, and there's a power dynamic. I know you didn't, but that's what they'll think." Silence, heavy and suffocating. "I need to think," he said. "Okay, just give me a day to figure out how to handle this." "Handle this," she repeated. "You mean handle me?" "That's not what I meant. It's what you said." She left before he could respond, walked out of his office, through the empty floor, down the elevator, out to the parking garage where her Civic sat under the same burnt-out light, sat in the driver's seat and didn't cry. Just sat there, numb, while the sun finished setting and Austin turned its lights on, one by one. Her phone buzzed. "Brody, I'm sorry. That came out wrong. Can we talk tomorrow?" She didn't respond. The email came Tuesday afternoon. From HR Department to Heather Sanders. Subject, Organizational Restructure. Dear Heather, as part of our ongoing organizational improvements, effective immediately, you are being reassigned to the Operational Analytics team under Director Susan Chen. This lateral move reflects our commitment to developing talent across departments and will provide you with broader exposure to enterprise-level strategy. Please coordinate with Susan and Kelly regarding transition logistics. Your new office will be on the 6th floor. We appreciate your flexibility during this transition. Best regards, Human Resources. She read it 3 times. Each time, the words meant the same thing. He was moving her, away from his department, away from his supervision, away from him, a lateral move, broader exposure. Corporate speak for. We need to put distance between you before anyone asks questions. Her hands were shaking again. She grabbed her bag, her phone, walked straight to the 10th floor. Past Kelly's desk, Kelly looked up, started to say something, but Heather kept walking. She didn't knock, just opened his door. Brody was on a call. He looked up, surprised, held up a finger. "I'll call you back," he said into the phone, then hung up. "Heather, you reassigned me." "I can explain." "You reassigned me," she repeated. "Without asking, without discussing it. You just, what, decided it was easier to move me than actually deal with this?" "It's not like that." "Then what's it like? Because from here it looks like you're protecting yourself." He stood up, came around the desk. "I'm protecting both of us. If you stay in my department and people find out you're pregnant, they're going to ask questions. They're going to investigate. This way what? I'm someone else's problem? That's not—" "Yes, it is." Her voice cracked. She hated that, hated giving him the satisfaction. "You got scared and you ran, you pushed me away. I'm trying to do the right thing. The right thing would have been talking to me first. The right thing would have been figuring this out together, not making executive decisions about my career to cover your ass. Heather, please, I'm pregnant with your baby." The words felt too big for the room. "And your first instinct was to get rid of me." "I'm not getting rid of you." "Yes, you are. You're just doing it with an HR memo instead of—" She stopped, breathed. "I thought we were figuring this out. I thought Denver meant something." "It did. It does." "Then why does this feel like you're erasing it?" He didn't have an answer for that. Just stood there looking at her with those grey-green eyes that had looked at her so differently in that hotel room, like she was something precious instead of something to be managed. "The transfer goes through Friday," he said quietly. "I can't change it now without raising questions." "You mean you won't?" "Heather, I need to go. Can we please talk about this? You should have wanted to talk before you made the decision." She turned to leave, then stopped. "For the record, I'm keeping it. The baby. I don't need your permission and I don't need your support. I'll figure it out." "That's not fair. I want to what? Be involved? Be a father?" She laughed, bitter. "You can't even handle being in the same department as me." She left. This time, she didn't wait for a response. Kelly was at her desk, pointedly not looking up. Heather walked past, into the elevator, through the lobby, out into Austin afternoon heat that felt like walking into a wall. Her phone started buzzing before she made it to her car. Brody calling. She declined. He called again. Declined again. Then came the texts. "Please let me explain. This isn't what you think. I'm trying to protect you. Can we please just talk?" She turned her phone off, sat in her car with the AC blasting, watching people walk by on the sidewalk. Normal people with normal problems, not pregnant by their CEO who just reassigned them to another department like a piece of furniture. The nausea came back. She barely made it out of the car before she threw up in the parking garage, right there between 2 BMWs. Her professional life crumbling while her body reminded her why. She drove home, called her sister, broke down halfway through trying to explain. "Oh, honey," Amy said, "where is he? Put him on the phone." "He's not here." "Where is he?" "At work, being a coward." "I'm coming down there." "No, don't. I needed to tell someone." "You're keeping it?" "Yeah. And he knows." "Yeah. What does he want to do?" Heather laughed again, that same broken sound. "Apparently he wants to transfer me to a different department so nobody asks questions." "Are you kidding me?" I wish I was. Amy was quiet for a moment. Do you love him? The question caught her off guard. I don't know, maybe. I thought, in Denver, I thought maybe we could be something. But now he's showing you who he is. Yeah, and you believe him. Heather looked around her apartment, the dying plant on her desk, the laundry still in the basket, the 2 quiet rooms where she'd be raising a baby alone because the father was too scared to fight for them. Yeah, she said. I believe him. They talked for another hour. Amy offered to come down anyway. Heather said no, said she needed time to think, said she'd call tomorrow. After they hung up, she sat on the couch that used to belong to her college roommate and put her hand on her stomach. Nothing there yet. Not really. Just cells dividing. A life starting whether either of them was ready or not. Her phone was still off. She turned it back on. 23 missed calls from Brody. 14 texts. The last one just said, I'm sorry. She typed back, you should be. Then, I start on the 6th floor Monday, don't call me. She blocked his number, not permanently, just for now, just until she could breathe without feeling like the world was ending. Outside, the sun set. The upstairs neighbor started playing guitar. The AC rattled. Everything the same, everything different. She was 28, pregnant, and alone, and the man who'd said no regrets had just shown her exactly what he meant. The 6th floor was quieter than the 10th. Susan Chen's department was steady, predictable. No CEO dropping by, no late meetings, just work. Heather threw herself into it. Her body changed week by week. Loose sweaters even in 80-degree November heat. She saw Brody 3 times in the first 2 months. Once in the lobby, their eyes met. He started toward her, she walked away. Once at a company meeting, she sat in back. He presented up front. She left early. The 3rd time was different. She found him waiting by her car. He'd been standing there, hands in pockets, looking 5 years older than 5 weeks ago. 5 minutes, she said, before he could ask. They sat on a bench. November air finally cool. I'm seeing a therapist twice a week, he said, and I told HR everything. They're investigating. I might lose my position. Good. I want to be there. For you. For the baby. You want to be there now. Ice in her voice. Where were you when I needed you? When I sat in waiting rooms alone? When I threw up before work? I know. No. You don't. She stood. Your 5 minutes are up. That night she cried. Not because he didn't deserve forgiveness, but because part of her still wanted to give it. December brought the ultrasound. She went alone to a clinic near her apartment, watching other couples hold hands in the waiting room. The tech was cheerful, too cheerful, as she showed Heather the screen. Strong heartbeat. You're about 13 weeks. Due date looks like late June. Heather stared at the grainy image. Her baby. Half her, half Brody. A person they'd made without thinking about consequences. The tech printed a photo. Heather put it in her purse and didn't look at it for 3 days. When she finally did, sitting on her couch late at night, she almost texted him, almost unblocked his number and sent the picture, almost gave him another chance. Then she remembered the email, the transfer, the way he'd chosen fear over her. She put the photo in a drawer, Christmas in San Antonio. Her mother asked the question in the kitchen, Are you pregnant? The dish clattered in the sink. Yeah. Does he know? Yeah, we're not together. Amy found her later. You okay? No. Heather's hand went to her barely showing stomach. I don't know how to do this. You're not alone, you have us. But lying in her childhood bedroom that night, Heather had never felt more alone. Months crawled by. Brody tried, emails she deleted, a package at her door with vitamins and a note saying, please. She kept the vitamins, threw away the note. In March, Susan told her, O'Connell's stepping down, temporary leave. The board gave him an ultimatum. That night, Heather unblocked his number, stared at it, didn't call. June came hot and miserable. 9 months pregnant, done, waiting. Her due date was June 23rd. The baby came June 20th. 3 in the morning. Contractions that made her breath catch. She called Amy, too far away in San Antonio. Called a cab because driving seemed impossible. She did not call Brody. The hospital was bright and busy even at that hour. The labor was long, 15 hours of pain that the epidural only partly helped. Nurses checked dilation and told her to breathe, and everything narrowed down to just this: her body doing something it had never done before. Around hour 10, she thought about calling him. Her phone was right there. His number unblocked. She didn't. The baby came at 6:47 p.m. A boy, 7 pounds, 3 ounces, screaming and perfect and terrifying. They put him on her chest, warm and impossibly small. She looked down at his dark hair, his tiny fists, and felt something crack open in her chest. "You got a name?" the nurse asked. "Owen," she said. "His name is Owen." Amy arrived 2 hours later, held the baby while Heather tried to process what had just happened. "You should tell him," Amy said softly. "He deserves to know." Heather looked at Owen sleeping in her sister's arms, so small, so vulnerable, so completely dependent on her to make the right choices. "Yeah," she said, "but not tonight." She sent the text the next morning. Unblocked his number one more time, typed it out carefully. "Had the baby, a boy, he's healthy." Her phone rang 30 seconds later. "A boy?" His voice sounded destroyed. "You had the baby?" "Last night." "Jesus, are you okay? Is he okay?" "We're fine." "Which hospital?" she told him, heard rustling on his end like he was already moving. "I'm coming," he said. "Brody, I'm coming." 15 minutes. He arrived in 12. She heard his voice at the nurse's station, heard him asking which room, heard his footsteps in the hallway too fast, and then stopping. He stood in the doorway, looking at her like he was seeing a ghost. "Hi," he said. "Hi." His eyes went to the bassinet beside her bed, to Owen, sleeping. He crossed the room slowly, looked down at his son like he couldn't quite believe what he was seeing. "He's so small," Brody whispered. 7 pounds. "What's his name?" "Owen." "Owen." He said it like a prayer, like a promise. Silence, heavy and complicated and full of 7 months of absence. "Why didn't you call me?" he asked. "When you went into labor?" "Why would I?" He flinched. "Because he's my son. You made it pretty clear you didn't want to be involved." "That's not—" He stopped, ran his hand through his hair, the same gesture from months ago. "I was wrong. I was scared and stupid and wrong. I know that doesn't fix anything. I know sorry isn't enough, but I'm asking anyway. Can I hold him?" She should have said no, should have made him work for it, made him prove he deserved this. But he looked so broken standing there, and Owen was his son too. "Sit down," she said. He sat. She picked up Owen. He stirred but didn't wake, and placed him carefully in Brody's arms. Brody held him like he was made of glass, stared down at him like he was memorizing every detail. His hand came up to touch Owen's cheek. Something in his face crumbled. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "God, Heather, I'm so sorry. I missed everything. I missed all of it because I was scared and I ran and I—" His voice broke. "Yeah," she said quietly. "You did. Is there any way—" He looked at her, tears on his face. "Can I be part of his life? However you'll let me." She looked at him holding their son, at 7 months of absence trying to be erased by 15 minutes of regret. "You can visit," she said. "Be part of his life. But us, you and me, that's not something I can think about right now." "Okay. And if you disappear again—" "I won't. You don't know that. You're right, I don't." He looked at Owen, then at her. "But I'm going to prove it, however long it takes." After visiting hours ended, he left reluctantly, put Owen back in the bassinet with a gentleness that made her chest ache. "Thank you," he said at the door, "for letting me meet him." After he left, Heather sat in the quiet hospital room, holding her sleeping son, thinking about all the ways love could break, and wondering if broken things could ever really be fixed. The answer, she thought, was time would tell. It always did. 6 months later. Owen turned over for the first time on a Tuesday afternoon in December in Heather's living room, while she was folding laundry and pretending she wasn't exhausted down to her bones. 1 second he was on his back, staring at the ceiling fan like it was the most fascinating thing in the universe. The next, He was on his stomach, looking surprised by his own accomplishment. "Oh my God," she said to the empty apartment. Then louder, "Owen!" He just stared at her, drool on his chin, looking pleased with himself. She grabbed her phone, almost called Brody. Her finger hovered over his name in her contacts, not blocked anymore, just there, waiting. She took a video instead, sent it to him with no message. 3 dots appeared immediately. Then, "No way. When did this happen?" "Just now. I can't believe I missed it." She almost wrote back something cutting, something about how he'd chosen to miss things. But Owen was making happy noises on the floor, and she was too tired for old fights. "There'll be other firsts," she typed instead. "Yeah," he responded. Then, "Can I come by this weekend? Bring him that toy I told you about." "Saturday, 2 p.m. I'll be there." He would be. That was the thing. In the 6 months since Owen was born, Brody had shown up. Not perfectly, not without stumbling, but consistently. Every Saturday, sometimes twice a week. Bringing diapers she didn't ask for, holding Owen while she showered, learning how to change him, feed him, read his cries, being a father, just not her partner. Saturday came cold and grey, the kind of Texas winter day that couldn't decide what it wanted to be. Heather had Owen dressed in the outfit her mother sent, little jeans and a sweater that made him look impossibly small and impossibly grown up at the same time. Brody arrived at exactly 2 p.m. He always arrived exactly on time now. Never early, never late. Like he was afraid that deviating even 5 minutes would prove he couldn't be trusted. "Hey," he said at the door, holding a wrapped box. "Hey, come in." Owen was in his bouncer, watching the ceiling fan again, his new favorite thing. Brody's face lit up the way it always did when he saw his son. "There he is." He crouched down, touched Owen's tiny hand. "I heard you rolled over. Show off." Owen grinned, grabbed Brody's finger. "He missed you," Heather said, then immediately regretted it. Too much. Too familiar. But Brody just smiled. "I missed him too." He'd gotten better at this, at being present without pushing, at not asking for more than she was willing to give. Sometimes Heather wondered if he was waiting for her to change her mind, to forgive him, to let him back in. Other times she wondered if he'd accepted that the door was closed. She didn't know which one scared her more. "Coffee?" she asked. "Yeah, thanks." They moved to the kitchen. This was the routine now. Brody would come over, they'd make small talk while he held Owen, and then he'd leave, polite, careful, like they were negotiating a business deal instead of raising a child together. Better than the alternative, she told herself, better than him being gone. But some nights when Owen was asleep and the apartment was too quiet, she wondered if better was enough. "How's work?" Brody asked, measuring formula with the precision of someone who'd practiced. "Fine, Susan's great, the team's solid." "Good. You? Busy?" "The Denver contract is expanding. Richardson wants to double the implementation scope." "That's good." "Yeah, this is what they'd become. 2 people who once couldn't stop talking, now filling silences with pleasantries." Owen made a noise. Brody picked him up, held him against his shoulder. Natural now, comfortable, like he'd been doing it forever instead of just 6 months. "He's getting so big," Brody said. "I know, growing too fast. 12 pounds now, 13 as of last week." Brody looked at her. "You okay?" "You look tired." "I'm always tired. I have a 6-month-old. "Right. Sorry. Stupid question." She poured the coffee, handed him a mug. Their fingers didn't touch. They moved to the living room, sat on opposite ends of the couch while Owen played with a soft block, concentrating with the intense focus only babies had. "So," Brody said. "So, I've been thinking." "About?" He was quiet for a moment, watching Owen. "About the new year. About, I want to set up a college fund for Owen, and I want to make sure you're covered. Health insurance, childcare, whatever you need. Brody, you already pay child support. I know, but I want to do more. You can't buy your way back." The words came out harsher than she meant. He flinched. "That's not what I'm trying to do," he said quietly. "I'm just trying to be responsible, to take care of you both. I can take care of us. I know you can. You've been doing it this whole time. He looked at her. But you shouldn't have to. Not alone. Something in her chest tightened. She looked away, focusing on Owen instead. Safe, uncomplicated. I appreciate the offer, she said. Let's talk about it later. Okay. More silence. Owen dropped his block. Brody picked it up, handed it back. The cycle repeated. Can I ask you something? Brody said. Sure. Do you ever... He stopped, started again. Do you think about Denver? The question caught her off guard. Sometimes. Me too. He was watching Owen, not her. I think about what I would have done differently if I'd known. Known what? That I was going to fall in love with you. He said it matter of fact, like he was talking about the weather. That running away would be the biggest mistake I'd ever make. Heather's breath caught. Brody, I'm not asking for anything, he interrupted. I know I don't get to. I wanted you to know that I think about it, that if I could go back to November and make different choices, I would. But you can't. No, I can't. Owen started fussing. Heather picked him up, grateful for the distraction, held him close, inhaling that baby smell. Milk and soap and something uniquely Owen. I should probably feed him, she said. Right. Yeah. Brody stood, collected his coat. I'll get out of your hair. You can stay if you want while I feed him. He looked surprised. You sure? Yeah. So he stayed. Sat in the armchair while she settled on the couch with Owen and a bottle. The TV was off. The apartment quiet except for Owen's small, contented sounds. This is what it could have been like, Heather thought. If he hadn't run, if they'd figured it out together. Quiet Saturday afternoons, a family. But that door had closed, she'd closed it. Because trusting someone who ran when things got hard felt like asking to be hurt again, even if part of her still wanted to try. Heather, Brody said softly. Yeah, I know I don't get to ask this, but is there ever a world where you forgive me? She looked at him, really looked, saw the regret etched in every line of his face, the exhaustion that matched hers, the love for Owen that was so obvious it hurt, and underneath all of it, the question he wasn't asking, the one about them. I don't know, she said honestly. Maybe, but not now. When? I don't know that either, maybe never. She adjusted Owen, who was starting to drift off. You made a choice, and I get that you regret it. I believe that you regret it, but I lived through 7 months of doing this alone because you got scared. I know. And I can't just forget that because you showed up after he was born and decided you wanted to be a father. I know, he repeated. I'm not asking you to forget, I'm asking if there's a path forward, eventually. Owen had fallen asleep against her chest. She stood carefully, carried him to his crib in the bedroom. Brody followed, standing in the doorway while she laid their son down, adjusted his blanket, turned on the white noise machine. In the dim light of the nursery, surrounded by the life they'd accidentally created, Heather felt the weight of everything unsaid pressing down on her. The path forward is co-parenting, she said, turning to face him. Being good parents to Owen, that's what we focus on. And us? There is no us, not anymore. Because you don't want there to be? Or because you're scared? The question hit like a fist. That's not fair. I know, I'm sorry. He ran his hand through his hair, still that same gesture. I see you with him and I think about what we could be, the three of us. And I know I screwed it up, I know I don't deserve another chance, but I can't stop thinking about it. Brody, I love you. He said it again, stronger this time. I'm in love with you. I was in Denver and I am now and I probably will be for the rest of my life. And I know that doesn't change what I did. But I needed you to know. Heather's eyes stung. Don't do this. I'm not trying to pressure you. I'm being honest. Well, stop it. Stop being honest. It's easier when you're not. Why? Because. The word came out too loud. She lowered her voice, aware of Owen sleeping 10 feet away. Because I spent 7 months teaching myself not to need you, not to want you. And you showing up here every weekend being a good dad and saying things like that makes it harder. Harder to what? To keep protecting myself from you. The admission hung between them. Brody took a step closer, So don't, he said. Stop protecting yourself. Let me prove I'm not going anywhere. You already left once, and I'll regret it until I die. But I'm here now. I'm here and I'm not leaving, and I'm asking, begging really, for a chance to show you that. She wanted to say yes, wanted to fall into him and believe that love could be enough, that his regret and her hope could build something solid. But fear held her back. The same fear he'd felt in November, when everything got complicated. The fear of being hurt, of trusting and losing, of letting someone in who'd already proven they could leave. I need time, she said finally. Okay. And I can't promise anything. I know. But she stopped, breathed. But maybe, eventually, we could see. Something in his expression cracked open. Hope, fragile and desperate. Yeah? Maybe. That's all I can give you right now. Maybe is more than I deserve. He left a few minutes later, kissed Owen's forehead while the baby slept, oblivious to the adult mess surrounding him, stood at the door, looking at Heather like he was memorizing her. See you next week? He asked. Yeah, next week. After he left, Heather stood in the middle of her apartment, listening to Owen's white noise machine and the sound of her own breathing. She'd given him hope. Maybe. The possibility of a future that looked different than the present. Was it the right choice? She didn't know. But she knew this. Loving someone who hurt you was complicated. Forgiving them was harder, and trusting them again felt impossible until suddenly it didn't. Maybe they'd find their way back to each other. Maybe they wouldn't. But they'd always have Owen, a beautiful boy with his father's eyes and his mother's stubbornness. Proof that sometimes the best things came from the hardest moments. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough to build on. 1 year later, Heather stood in the kitchen of her new apartment, bigger than the old one, with 2 bedrooms and a dishwasher that actually worked, watching Brody attempt to get Owen to eat peas. Come on, buddy. They're good, see? Brody ate one, made an exaggerated, yummy face. Owen laughed, threw a pea at him. Helpful, Heather said, bringing over wipes. He's expressing himself. He's making a mess. Also expressing himself. She rolled her eyes, but she was smiling. Couldn't help it. Owen at 18 months was a chaos agent, walking now, babbling constantly, getting into everything. And Brody showed up for all of it. Not just Saturdays anymore, 3-4 times a week, bath time, bedtime, the pediatrician appointment where Owen screamed for 20 minutes straight. All of it. Slowly, carefully, they'd rebuilt. Not what they had in Denver, that was gone, buried under too much hurt. But something new. Something that looked like partnership, like trust, like maybe. Last week, Brody had asked her to dinner, not at her apartment with Owen, just them. A date. She'd said yes. They were taking it slow, glacially slow, but forward. Always forward. Hey, Brody said, pulling her from her thoughts. Where'd you go? Nowhere. Just thinking. About? About how you have peas in your hair. He reached up, found the offending vegetable. Your son is an excellent shot. My son? Definitely yours when he's throwing food. Owen babbled something that might have been dada or might have been nothing. They both froze. Did he just... Brody started. Say it again, Heather urged Owen. Come on, baby. Dada, Owen said clearly, then grinned, pleased with himself. Brody's face did something complicated. He looked at Heather, eyes bright. Yeah, he did. Brody picked Owen up, peas forgotten, and held him close. That's right, buddy, I'm Dada. I'm your Dada and I love you so much. Heather watched them, her boys, both of them, and felt something settle in her chest. Not forgiveness exactly. That was still a work in progress, but something close to it. Hope maybe, or maybe just love. The complicated, messy kind that survived mistakes and grew anyway. Hey, Brody, she said. Yeah? You're doing good. As a dad. Just, I wanted you to know. He looked at her over Owen's head. Yeah? Yeah. And as... He stopped. Never mind. Say it. As whatever we're becoming? She thought about it. About the dinner next week. About the way he looked at her sometimes, like he was still amazed she let him be here. About the maybe that had turned into something more solid, even if she wasn't ready to name it yet. "You're doing good at that too," she said. His smile could have lit the whole apartment. Owen threw another pea. They both laughed. And outside, Austin carried on, traffic and heat and people living their lives. But inside, in this moment, there was just this. A family that looked different than planned. Harder won, more complicated, but real and theirs. And maybe, just maybe, exactly what they needed. A message about second chances. Not every story has a happy ending tied up with a neat bow. Sometimes love breaks. Sometimes people make choices they can't take back. Sometimes the trust that shatters takes years to rebuild, if it rebuilds at all. But this story isn't about perfect forgiveness or easy reconciliation. It's about what happens after the mistake, about showing up even when it's hard, about doing the work when there are no guarantees it will matter. Brody ran when things got complicated. That was his truth. And Heather closed her heart to protect herself. That was hers. But love, real love, the kind that survives mistakes, isn't about never falling. It's about getting back up, about proving through action, not words, that you're worth the risk. Does Heather fully trust Brody again? Maybe not yet, maybe not for a long time, but she's letting him try. And sometimes, that's the bravest thing you can do. Give someone who hurt you the chance to do better. Because the alternative, closing yourself off completely, never risking again, isn't safety. It's just another kind of loss. This story asks, what do we owe to the people who hurt us? And what do we owe to ourselves? The answer isn't simple, it never is. But maybe it starts with this, showing up, being honest, doing the work, and hoping that, eventually, love and time can heal what fear once broke. The end. To you, the reader. Have you ever had to decide whether to give someone a second chance? Someone who hurt you, but who showed up afterward trying to do better? What did you choose? And looking back, do you think you made the right call? Share your story in the comments. Your experience might help someone else who's standing at that same crossroads, trying to figure out whether to open the door or keep it closed. Your participation means a lot to the channel. Please share your thoughts in the comments. Your time means everything. Show your support with a like and subscribe so you don't miss what happens next. Thank you, and see you soon.